Hello. So, social studies. We're going to read 2 sections in our magazine together, and then there's a Google form attached. So, let's look over some of those vocab words that we're going to see as we're reading. If you want to write this down to help you remember the words, go ahead and do that, okay? So, we're going to talk about regions and regions around the United States. So, first we need to know, what is a region? So, a region is a noun, okay? So, it's a place with at least one physical or human feature that makes it different from other places. So it's something about that the people have done or something that like God made of that land that's different from other places. So for example, Maine is in the northeast region of our country. So that area, that place where it has something different than the other places in the United States, that northeast region. The next word is interdependent. Now, this is an adjective, so it's a describing word. It means relying on the support of one another. So in our classroom, you could say that we're interdependent. We rely on each other to help us. The country's regions, so those different places, are interdependent because they rely on each other for resources. We don't just live in our own little bubble. We get things from all over the country. Okay, so we're interdependent. Then our last word is county, not country. Look carefully, there's no R. It's county. This is another noun. It's a large section of a state that may include several cities or towns. For example, Osage County is the largest county in the state of Oklahoma. Or like where I live in Dakota County. So it's a large section that has a lot of different cities, okay? So we're going to use these words to help us read. So let's get our magazines out. Ours look like this. Now, ours is a little different, or mine's a little different. So I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit so my picture might get cut off so that I can read it. There we go. I think I can, we'll slide near it. Right about there. All right. So we're going to talk about what is a region. We know the definition, but what does that mean? So let's read through these 2 pages. Your mom brings in the mail one day and hands you a big red envelope. Inside, you find a letter announcing amazing news. You've been selected to host your own TV series. It will be a show about what it's like to live in places all over the United States. The producers fly you to their studio right away. They ask you how you'd like to present to each episode. It's a tough question. There are so many different people, places, climates, and cultures. You know there's only one way to tackle this project. You tell the producers that you'll describe your life in your country by region. Interesting, they say. Tell us more. Well, you say, a region is an area that has at least one feature that is not like other areas around it. It can be as large as a continent or as small as a neighborhood. Identifying regions is a useful way to group similar landforms, climates, countries, people, and industries together. It's also a way to find differences between them. So let's zoom in up here. We're going to look underneath this like winding road or river. Let's see what that is. While regions next to each other are different, they may be interdependent. Do you remember that vocab word? That means that they rely on one another for resources, products, and services. In California, people depend on farmers in the Central Valley to supply them with food. But without water from the mountains, the farmers could not produce nearly as much. People alter or change regions to meet their needs. They also connect regions with roads and railways and with communications such as phones and the internet. You tell the TV crew that regions can be sorted into 4 types. So this is important, 4 different types. Political regions, such as cities, counties, and states, share a government. Physical regions have similar landforms, rivers, climates, or kinds of wildlife. Within economic regions, people use the same resources like fisheries or rich soil to make a living. In a cultural region, people share the same traditions, religion, or language, or they come from the same country. Because there are so many types of regions, every place can be considered part of more than one. For example, the food, architecture, and people of Louisiana seem like part of the Southeast. But in the state's seaports, ships from around the world fill up with oil from the Midwest and the Southwest. So Louisiana is more connected to those regions than to the Southeast for its economy. So Louisiana down here, even though it's like down in the South, like it said in the Southeast, it gets oil from places up here, okay, and over here. So if we're looking at it from the economic with like money side, a lot of where they get their money when they sell stuff isn't from what is made there. It's from other places. But if we go off of that physical where it is, then it's in that southeast. Let's read more about the U.S. underneath the U.S. populations. Which regions of the United States have the highest population density, which means number of people who live within a specific area? Which regions have the lowest? Think about people who live in big cities. What do you think they might need from other regions in order to survive? What do they produce that people in rural regions might need? So let's look at our map. How can we figure out where that high density is? Well, did you notice the key up here? It has different colors. So people per square mile. So imagine like you can see how it's almost like it's broken up into little squares. So each mile is a little square, let's say. So if it's that light green, there's less than one person in that whole mile. If it's that kind of like seafoamy green is that less than 1 mile. That light green, 1 to 19. Yellow is 20 to 88. Light orange, 89 to 499. That dark orange, we start to get higher, 500 to 1,999. And if we get into that like red or pink, more than 2,000 people in a mile. Okay? So which regions do you notice? Well, I noticed that up here in this kind of, in the eastish side, there's a lot more of that orange and red, isn't there? And even that yellow still gets higher. But if we look over here a little bit more towards the west, there's a lot more of that seafoam green and that light green, and a little bit of yellow, and some orange, but not nearly as much as over here. What about Minnesota? Where is our highest populated place? Right around Minneapolis, right? In that big city. I mean, that makes sense. That's by our capital, by St. Paul. So in our big cities, we have more people. And as we go up north, where a lot of like trees and lakes are, it drops down. And as we get into the city, there's more people. Okay. So what do you think somebody in people might need from other, so like what do people in other regions, people, let's say in California, what do they need from us? Well, we have a lot of farms, don't we? In California, they have some, but they don't have as much because it's a lot drier, right? So they get a lot of produce and like farm animals and stuff from the Midwest. But down south, they get warmer temperatures, so they have more like fruits and veggies that they can grow year round. So they might get some of that from down here. So we're that interdependent. We rely on people from across the whole country to help us. That's so cool. All right, so that's page 1. Let's zoom out and let's look at the next page. That was what's a region. Now we're going to read regions around the United States. Now we're going to get more into the different parts. Which region are we in? Looking at that map, can you tell? We're in that Midwest. Yep, we're in that pink section right in the middle. We're lucky enough to be right pretty much in the middle of the whole country. If we split it in half like this, we'd be right in the middle. All right, so let's read about regions around the United States. At the TV studio, everyone loves your suggestion to focus on a different region for each episode of the show. The location scout gives you a call. She has to find the right place to shoot each episode. What kind of region did you have in mind? Political? Cultural? How many shows should the studio plan for? You think long and hard about the many ways you can divide the country into regions. Do you want to divide it by physical regions? If you do, you might send your camera crew up a mountainside one day and through a swamp the next. You remember that the United States shares borders with Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. Many regions extend across borders. How will you consider all the options? So if we look at our map, where would Canada be? Up or down? Good, Canada's up here. Where would Mexico be then? Good, down below. Good. So let's read about the Montana State Capitol. All right. Let's zoom in a little. Oop, not that much, Mrs. Wells. All right, so Montana State Capitol. One way you could plan your show is to divide the country into political regions. States are divided into counties called parishes or boroughs in some places. So it's another fancy way to say counties. A town or city where the county's government is based is called a county seat. A city government is called a municipal government. Remember talking about municipal governments when we did our different parts of the government? That municipal. All right, let's look here. Let's go to this middle one underneath the southeast. One way to group together states that share physical features, economies, and ways of life is to divide the United States into 5 geographic regions. We call these the Northeast, the Southeast, Midwest, Southwest, and the West. Because each region is made up of states, they have exact borders. That makes them easier to study. It's also a great number of episodes for your TV series. All right, let's go to that states. Up in the top underneath the picture of, you know what that's a picture of? White House, good. So states are grouped into large regions. They're also divided into smaller regions, such as counties and cities. These have governments that provide services to the people who live in them. The federal or national government runs agencies, such as the U.S. Postal Service for the entire country. The state provides services such as schools and parks. Local government provide police officers, firefighters, and other services. Remember, if you're thinking smaller, like in your city, that would be that local. And as you get bigger in the government, we go local to our state, right? And then we're in the whole country, that federal level. The United States itself can be considered a region of the North American continent. Our neighbors on this continent are Canada and Mexico. Many of the landforms and waterways in our country also reach across borders and into these nations. Because Canada is to the north, it's much colder than the United States. Mexico, to the south, is warmer. Many people in both Canada and Mexico live close to the United States borders. You might choose to divide your show by industrial regions. You could stand on an offshore oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, talking about how the oil industry provides jobs. You might interview a computer programmer in California's Silicon Valley. You could talk to an assembly worker in a car manufacturing plant in Detroit. Suppose you focus on agricultural regions. You might interview a combine operator who's harvesting grain in central Kansas. So we have all of these different areas. And what's that word that means we rely on each other? Interdependent, based on what skills we have. So like in the Midwest, we do a lot of farming with like grains and like plants. down in the Southeast, they do a lot with like produce. Over on the West, they do some like computer programming and stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't those skills in the other regions, but each region kind of has its main thing that it's known for. Okay, so sometimes that is what might bring people to move out to different regions or different states for their jobs because they want to go to that region that it's known for. All right, so we did our readings. We talked about our vocab. Now, to show me how well you understood, and you have your magazine ready too, you're going to answer 3 questions for me, okay? So, first one, first one's your name. Tell me your name. Then you have to pick the right definition of a region. Remember, you can use your magazine. I want you to use that to look back and find these answers. What is a region, okay? List one type of region. The magazine went through and listed quite a few. List one type of region, okay? And I'll look over this, so if it says you got it wrong because of spelling or something, I'll mark it back, okay? And then tell me, which government, we talked about the different levels a lot, would employ a dog catcher, like a dog is loose? Would that be the federal, state, or local? Okay? So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks for joining for social studies.